My life was as ordinary as the next breath, a typical summer on the Caspian Sea, until one sudden plunge changed everything. I went under, trapped, the ocean claiming me, and then a light, unlike any earthly glow, opened up to a reality more vibrant than life itself. What if the most profound peace isn't found in living, but in letting go?
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a truly profound story. Arazdordi's journey to the edge of existence offers a remarkable glimpse into the afterlife. Before we hear his incredible account, please subscribe and like this video. For today's question, how does the idea of loved ones, even ancestors, being a part of your transition in the afterlife resonate with you? Share your thoughts below. Now, let's hear Arazdordi's story.
I was 19, a freshman at university, convinced I had life all figured out, or at least I was on the path to figuring it out. The world felt like an open book, full of chapters I was eager to write. Little did I know the most profound story wasn't one I would write, but one that would be written upon me. Before the Caspian Sea swallowed me whole, I was just a kid, really. My name is Arazdordi, and back in 1970, I was a 19-year-old student at Pahlavi University in Iran, eager for the summer break. Life then was a predictable rhythm of studies, friends, and the quiet comfort of home. I was the youngest of my group, still finding my voice in the world, often observing more than speaking, but always with a keen eye for adventure. My days were filled with the pursuit of knowledge, the camaraderie of dorm life, and the innocent excitement of youth. I lived a relatively simple life, rooted in the familiar traditions of my family and community. My mornings often began with the call to prayer, followed by the hurried rush of getting to classes. Afternoons were for diving into textbooks, debating with classmates, or sometimes just losing myself in thought by the campus fountain, watching the world go by. Growing up, I was a curious child, always questioning, always exploring. I remember long, sun-drenched afternoons spent playing in the dusty streets of my hometown, the laughter of friends echoing between ancient walls. There was one vivid memory, though, that always stood out, a moment from when I was just 6 years old. I had fallen off a runaway horse, hitting my head and losing consciousness. The world went dark, and for a short while I was gone. My family thought I was dead. I remember coming back to the blurry faces of worried relatives, their relief palpable. But there was nothing to remember from that brief absence. No grand vision, no profound insight. It was just an empty space, a void. This early brush with the edge of existence, though uneventful in terms of an experience, subtly shaped my early understanding, or rather, my lack of understanding, about death. It became a distant, almost abstract concept, something that happened to others, a mere blank space between breaths. Emotionally, I was a mix of youthful optimism and an underlying sense of quiet searching. There was a contentment in my routine, a satisfaction in academic pursuits, but also a low hum of something more, something undefined that I felt I was missing. It wasn't dissatisfaction, not exactly, but a subtle yearning for a deeper connection, a more profound understanding of the world beyond what textbooks offered. I enjoyed the simple pleasures, the taste of my mother's cooking, the sound of a good joke shared among friends, the warmth of the Iranian sun on my face. Yet there was always a part of me that felt a little detached, a quiet observer of my own life, wondering what lay beneath the surface. I wasn't particularly religious in a dogmatic sense. Despite being raised Muslim, my beliefs were more practical, less fervent. Death to me was the end, a finality. There was no grand vision of an afterlife, no intricate belief in ancestral spirits or divine encounters. It was just the closing of a chapter, the extinguishing of a flame. I certainly never entertained the idea of encountering my deceased ancestors with baby faces in some ethereal realm. This earthly skepticism, this grounded view of existence, formed the bedrock of my reality, a reality that was about to be irrevocably shattered and rebuilt in ways I could never have imagined.
The sun was high, the Caspian Sea glittering like a million scattered diamonds, and the air was thick with the careless laughter of youth. It felt like any other perfect summer day, until a simple game, a moment of reckless abandon, twisted into something terrifying, something that pulled me from the familiar world into the cold embrace of the unknown. The summer of 1970 was a tapestry woven with sunshine, endless days, and the carefree spirit of youth. As a freshman, just finished with my first year at Pahlavi University, the thought of anything but pure enjoyment was a distant whisper. My friends and I, 4 of us in total, had planned a day trip, a small adventure to break the monotony of the long summer holidays. Our destination was Ashur-Ade, a small peninsula nestled on the shores of the Caspian Sea. We'd borrowed a small motorboat, the kind that chugs along, leaving a white foamy trail in its wake, carrying us further and further from the familiar coastline. The morning of that fateful day began like countless others. The air was warm, already thick with the promise of summer heat. I woke up with the sun streaming through my window, the usual sounds of the household stirring. A light breakfast, a quick chat with my family, and then off to meet my friends. We were all buzzing with anticipation, laughing and joking as we made our way to the docks. The Caspian Sea, a vast, shimmering expanse, stretched out before us, inviting and deceptively tranquil. As the motorboat sputtered to life and we glided across the water, the wind in our hair, the world felt boundless, full of possibility. Our purpose for the day was a visit to my high school classmate, Hamid, whose father happened to be the mayor of the island. Hamid was waiting for us at the waterfront pier, a welcoming smile on his face. He was an island boy through and through, sun-kissed and easygoing. We spent a good part of the morning exploring the peninsula, its dusty paths winding through sparse vegetation, the air smelling faintly of salt and sun-baked earth. We talked about university, about our plans for the future, about everything and nothing. The world was simple, tangible, and utterly predictable. After our tour, as the sun climbed higher, Hamid suggested we go for a swim. My eyes immediately fell on a "No Swimming" sign prominently displayed on the beach. A small ripple of unease, a flicker of caution went through me. I pointed it out, my voice laced with a hint of reservation. But Hamid, with the casual confidence of someone who knew these waters intimately, simply waved it off. "It's just a precautionary measure," he assured us. "The beach is perfectly safe." His words, combined with the eager shouts of my friends, quickly overshadowed my initial hesitation. After all, what could go wrong on such a perfect day, with the sun shining and good friends by my side? The small warming faded into the background, dismissed as an unnecessary formality. We waded into the cool, refreshing water, the gentle waves lapping at our knees. The game we chose was a classic: throw and catch. One person, the catcher, would be tossed high into the air by the others. As they descended, the rest of the group would scatter, swimming away as fast as they could to avoid being captured. Whoever was caught became the next catcher. It was boisterous, innocent fun. On my turn, as the smallest of the group, I was hoisted up, feeling the immense strength of my friends below me. They counted to 3, and then I was soaring, a fleeting moment of weightlessness against the bright blue sky. The descent was quick, faster than I expected. Instead of landing upright, my head plunged into the water first. The momentum carried me downwards, my head lodging deep in the sand at the bottom. I tried to push off, to free myself, But the more I struggled, the deeper I seemed to sink, the more firmly I became wedged. Panic, cold and sharp, began to caw at my throat. The initial surprise gave way to a desperate, unyielding struggle. The sounds of my friends' distant splashes and laughter began to fade, replaced by a dull roaring in my ears. My lungs burned, demanding air, but all I could taste was sand and salty water. The world, which had moments ago been a vibrant tableau of summer joy, narrowed to a single terrifying sensation: suffocation. The constriction in my chest intensified, a vice tightening around my very breath, building to an unbearable pressure. Then a sharp, piercing pain, fleeting but intense, shot through my chest. It was the final, brutal crescendo before everything changed. The pain was a fleeting, final gasp, an unbearable squeeze, and then, suddenly, nothing. I was no longer trapped, no longer suffocating, but floating, drifting into a boundless, luminous expanse where time held no meaning and familiar faces somehow were waiting for me. It was a heaven I never knew existed, a place of pure, undeniable love. The sharp pain in my chest was the last sensation of the physical world, a final brutal jolt of my body screaming for air. For a fleeting instant, terror gripped me, an ice-cold dread that curdled in my gut as I felt the last vestiges of strength drain away. My lungs burned, demanding, protesting. And then, as if a switch had been flipped, the agony vanished. It didn't fade, it simply ceased to exist, replaced by an instantaneous, profound calmness. The crushing weight of the water, the suffocating sand, the relentless struggle, all of it dissolved into nothingness. I wasn't just calm, I was serene, a tranquility so absolute it transcended anything I had ever known in my brief 19 years. I didn't see my body from above, looking down at the frantic scene on the seabed. Instead, the world I had just inhabited, the one filled with crashing waves and distant laughter, simply lost all relevance. My awareness, previously tethered to a struggling, dying body, now seemed to expand, to drift, unburdened. As the physical sensations receded, a new reality bloomed before me. It wasn't a tunnel, no dark passage, but an immediate, panoramic realm characterized by radiant light. This wasn't merely bright light. It was a living, breathing essence, a luminous presence that permeated everything. It was soft, yet incredibly vibrant, a light that didn't blind, but rather embrace, saturating my entire being with its glow. It felt like the very fabric of existence was woven from this luminescence, boundless and infinite. There was no discernible source, no sun or lamp. The light simply was, everywhere, an all-encompassing embrace. It pulsed with a gentle rhythm, resonating deep within my nascent bodiless awareness, inviting me further.
In this boundless and luminous space, the first beings I encountered were a multitude of smiling baby faces. They weren't just faces. They were pure joy personified, each one radiating an innocence and delight that instantly filled me with immense elation. They seemed to greet me, waving not with physical hands, but with an energetic invitation, a silent welcome that resonated directly within my consciousness. Their eyes, wide and filled with an otherworldly brilliance, were fixed upon me, brimming with an unconditional angelic love. These visages were the embodiment of purity, divine holiness, and unparalleled beauty. Witnessing them, being in their presence, was the most tranquil moment I had ever encountered in my life. Every fear, every earthly worry, Every past regret simply melted away in the face of their benevolent gaze. An astonishing realization began to dawn upon me. I felt like I knew all these faces, not by name, not by earthly titles, but by who they were on earth before they died. And with that understanding, a profound truth settled in. They were all my long-deceased ancestors who had come to greet me. This wasn't a memory recalled, but a direct knowing, a download of information that bypassed traditional thought processes. It was an intuitive, undeniable recognition that resonated at the deepest core of my being. They were indeed waving at me, with their smiling, angelic baby faces extending an unequivocal invitation to join them. There was no spoken language, no auditory voices, yet their communication was crystal clear, telepathic, received directly as pure understanding. Their message was simple. Welcome. You are home. Join us. Time, as I knew it, ceased to exist. In this realm, everything seemed to be happening at once. Yet there was an eternal quality to each moment. It felt like an eternal experience, lasting a whole lifetime, stretching infinitely, unbound by seconds or minutes. It was in this timeless expanse that I observed my entire life not as a sequential playback, but encapsulated within a single, all-encompassing image of my past, imbued with an understanding that felt both objective and deeply personal. I didn't revisit specific moments of joy or pain, but rather received an instantaneous comprehension of my earthly journey, viewed through the lens of pure, unconditional love from these ancestral beings. There were no judgments, no recriminations, just an unadulterated overview. I didn't see visions of the future or past unconnected to my life. It was a singular, profound moment of self-realization within the context of my lineage.
As I was enveloped by this pervasive light and the joyful presence of my ancestors, an overwhelming feeling of lightness and freedom washed over me. I was unbound by gravity, by physical limitations, floating effortlessly, capable of movement without effort or resistance. This was an absolute sense of peace and euphoria that dwarfed any earthly pleasure. The contrast with my previous earthly existence, with its pains, its struggles, its inherent limitations, was stark and absolute. Here there was no weight, no friction, no suffering, only pure, unadulterated existence. I felt my whole life energy had condensed and fused with this radiant luminescence that encapsulated the greeting baby faces. I felt no sense of my previous earthly life. It was as if I had always been one of them forever. This sense of merging, of becoming one with the light and the collective consciousness of my ancestors, led to an incredible realization of unity and universal connection. I felt a profound sense of harmony with the entire universe. The illusion of separation, of being an individual distinct from everything else, vanished. I understood that I was not merely connected to these ancestors, but to all of existence, to the very fabric of the cosmos. There was an unconditional, angelic love that radiated from everything, a fundamental truth that underpinned this reality. This love was not merely an emotion, it was the essence of being, a boundless, infinite current that flowed through all things. Through this deep immersion, a profound wave of knowledge and understanding washed over me. I suddenly seemed to understand everything about the universe. It wasn't information conveyed in words, but a direct, intuitive knowing, a sudden and complete comprehension. I understood the continuum of life, the interconnectedness of all beings, the cyclical nature of existence. This was the culmination of intellectual and spiritual insight, a direct download of ultimate truths. I understood that peace of mind at the time of death
could indeed lead to such a serene transitional realm. While I didn't receive specific messages about my earthly purpose or how to live my life, I grasped that the core of existence was this love and unity, and that our actions, our intentions, reverberated through this greater fabric of being. The concept of wrongdoings seemed to carry a weight in this broader reality, implying that they might indeed catch up during this transition, potentially altering the state of the experience. But for me, in that moment, there was only the boundless light, the welcoming faces, and the absolute knowing that I was part of something infinitely greater, something eternal.
One moment I was bathed in an ethereal glow, surrounded by pure, boundless love. In the next, a crushing impact jolted me back into a world of pain and confusion. The transition was brutal, a violent wrenching from heaven back to the harsh reality of being alive again, leaving me coughing up sand and struggling to make sense of what had just been lost. The boundless, luminous realm, teeming with the joyful presence of my ancestors, was an eternity of peace and absolute belonging. I wanted to stay there forever, to remain fused with that radiant light, that unconditional love. There was no thought of return, no desire for my earthly life. But then, as abruptly as a lightning strike, an impact slammed into my chest. It wasn't a gentle nudge. It was a violent jolt, a brutal intrusion that tore me from the serene embrace of the transcendent. My eyes, which had been experiencing a vivid, boundless perception, snapped open. The first thing I saw was a blurry, tear-streaked face hovering over me, my friend Arazdordi. His hands were pressing down on my chest, tears streaming down his face, his expression a mixture of fear and desperate relief. The immediate sensation was one of disorientation, a jarring disconnect from the vastness I had just inhabited. The air, which had been irrelevant moments before, now tasted thick and metallic. My lungs, so recently free of all burden, suddenly convulsed. I started coughing, a violent guttural expulsion of sand, mud, and salty water. Each cough was a painful reminder of the physical body I had left behind, a grotesque contrast to the ethereal freedom I had just known. The shock of reanimation was immense. One moment, I was a part of something infinite, pure consciousness floating in a sea of light. The next, I was a sodden, shivering mess, tasting the gritty reality of the Caspian Sea. There was an overwhelming sense of disappointment, even sorrow at being pulled back. Why? Why couldn't I stay? The profound beauty, the deep knowing, the overwhelming love I had experienced felt so real, so much more real than this cold, heavy return to my body. I lay there, gasping, each breath a struggle against the sand in my throat, trying to reconcile the vastness of that other realm with this small, painful reality of this beach. My mind reeled, attempting to process the impossible juxtaposition. Had it been a dream? A hallucination brought on by lack of oxygen? But no, it had been too vivid, too coherent, too real.
My body felt alien, heavy, and weak. Every muscle ached, my head throbbed, and a persistent nausea churned in my stomach. I was shivering uncontrollably, not just from the cold of the water, but from the sheer shock of the transition. My limbs felt leaden, my voice hoarse from coughing. I was acutely aware of the gross discomfort, the stark physicality of existence, a stark contrast to the effortless, pain-free state I had just departed. Around me, my friends were a flurry of movement and emotion. Relief washed over their faces as they saw me cough and breathe, their earlier panic giving way to an outpouring of joyful cries. They quickly surrounded me, patting my back, offering shaky smiles. Arazdordi, still visibly shaken, explained what had happened. He had been swimming away, but for some reason he turned back just in time to see my toes sticking out of the water where I had been thrown. And immediate alarm bells rang in his head. He knew something was terribly wrong. He shouted to the others, and they swam back frantically. They found me stuck, head down, lodged in the seafloor. Arazdordi, without hesitation, pulled me up from the sand. They then carried my limp body to the shore, laying me down, unsure of what to do. I wasn't breathing, a terrifying silence in the midst of their frantic efforts. Luckily, by some miracle, I began to cough and gasp for air just as they were losing hope. In the immediate aftermath, surrounded by their joyful exclamations and relief, I couldn't bring myself to fully articulate what had happened. How could I describe a panoramic realm of radiant light, an eternity spent with smiling baby faces of deceased ancestors to people who were simply relieved I was breathing? The words felt inadequate, hollow. I knew instinctively that they wouldn't understand, that my experience transcended their reality. I offered a mumbled explanation, something about being stuck, about the pain, but I held back the true depth of what I had witnessed. The shock of being back, coupled with the difficulty of putting such an otherworldly experience into earthly language, kept me silent about the most profound parts. For now the knowledge remained mine, a secret held close, burning brightly beneath the surface of my raw, reawakened consciousness. The world I returned to was the same, yet I was irrevocably changed. The brilliant, loving faces of my ancestors were seared into my soul, a constant, vivid reminder that life is a continuum, and death is not an end, but a serene, welcoming transition. I no longer feared dying. Instead, I carried a piece of heaven within me, transforming every step of my earthly journey. Coming back from that boundless realm of light and love was like being forcibly ejected from the most beautiful dream imaginable. The world I returned to, the familiar shores of the Caspian Sea, my friends' tear-streaked faces, all seemed duller, flatter, almost two-dimensional in comparison. For a long time after, the vibrant hues of that other reality, the feeling of absolute peace and unconditional love, continued to overshadow the everyday. My previous life, with its academic pursuits, its mundane routines, and its youthful anxieties, felt trivial, almost insignificant. It was as if I had been granted a glimpse behind the curtain of existence, and once you've seen such profound truth, it's impossible to go back to pretending you haven't. The most global change in my life was a complete overhaul of my priorities. Before, I was driven by typical aspirations, good grades, a promising career, the comfortable predictability of a conventional life. But after experiencing that transcendent unity, those earthly ambitions felt hollow. What mattered now was connection, genuine connection with others, and a profound appreciation for the simple fact of being alive. I stopped chasing external validation and started seeking inner peace. My interests shifted dramatically. The casual hobbies of a university student seemed less compelling than the profound questions of existence. I began to seek out quiet moments, to meditate, to revisit the sensations of that radiant light. I found myself drawn to nature, to the quiet power of the sea that had almost claimed me, sensing a deeper interconnectedness that I had previously overlooked. Material possessions, once subtly important, lost their luster entirely. What good were earthly treasures when you'd experienced the boundless wealth of pure existence? My new worldview was nothing short of revolutionary. Before the near-death experience, death was a blank space, a final cessation.
I was a Muslim by upbringing, but my faith was more cultural than deeply spiritual. I certainly never believed in encountering my ancestors in such a tangible, angelic form. But that experience shattered my skepticism. It wasn't a belief, it was a knowing. I now understood with absolute certainty that death is not the end, but a serene transitional realm. The feeling of my entire life energy condensing and fusing with that radiant luminescence, becoming one with my ancestors, convinced me that life is a continuum. The individual soul, the essence of who we are, simply transitions. It taught me that while our earthly beliefs might shape our perception, the reality of the afterlife is far more profound and inclusive than any dogma can fully describe. I also gained an intuitive understanding that our actions on earth, particularly our wrongdoings, might indeed affect our transition, creating a sense of accountability in the grand scheme of things. But at its core, the universe, at least in the realm I touched, was founded on unconditional angelic love. This was the greatest truth revealed.
I didn't immediately embrace a new mission in the traditional sense, like becoming a preacher or an activist. Instead, my new purpose became deeply personal, to live in alignment with the truths I had witnessed. This meant cultivating peace within myself, striving for genuine connection with others, and approaching life with an open heart. Over the years, especially after moving to the USA in the late 1970s for graduate school, I slowly began to share my experience. It wasn't a sudden declaration, but a gradual unfolding, a quiet whispering of profound truths to those I felt would listen without judgment. I felt a quiet responsibility to bear witness, to let others know that there is more than meets the eye, that what awaits us is not to be feared. My profession remained distinct from this spiritual journey, but every interaction, every decision was now imbued with the wisdom gleaned from that transcendent encounter. Integrating this extraordinary experience into ordinary life wasn't without its difficulties and challenges. In the immediate aftermath, there was a profound sense of isolation. How do you explain seeing smiling baby faces of your deceased ancestors to friends who were simply relieved you were alive? Most people struggled to grasp the depth of it, often dismissing it as a dream, a hallucination, or simply the brain's reaction to oxygen deprivation. I learned to be selective about who I shared it with. There was the occasional misunderstanding, the polite but obvious skepticism, sometimes even a hint of condemnation from those who feared what they couldn't comprehend. I never sought to convert anyone, merely to share my truth. For a long time, I carried the weight of this secret, the immense beauty of it almost too sacred to utter. There was an initial existential crisis of sorts, a struggle to reconnect with the mundane after tasting the divine. The vibrancy of the spiritual world made the physical world seem dim, and it took time to appreciate the beauty of earthly life anew, to find the sacred in the ordinary. Today, those divine faces of babies are still imprinted in my mind forever, as vivid and real as they were in that luminous realm. I can still see them, access that feeling of profound peace whenever I need a serene moment for relaxation. My near-death experience was the most significant event of my life, eclipsing all others. It taught me that life is infinitely more vast and meaningful than we can ever conceive on earth. I now face death not with fear, but with a profound sense of anticipation, knowing that I will be greeted and rejoined by my ancestors. This conviction brings an incredible peace to my life, anchoring me in a deeper reality. So what is the ultimate message I carry from that experience? It is this: life is eternal, and love is its fundamental currency. We are all interconnected, threads in a vast, beautiful tapestry of existence. The suffering and struggles of this world are fleeting, but the essence of who we are, our soul, is immortal. Do not fear the unknown. Embrace the journey. For on the other side, there is a boundless light and a welcoming embrace waiting for you. May you find your own peace, your own understanding, and carry hope in your heart, no matter where your path leads.
Arazdordi's profound experience offers a powerful testament to the enduring nature of consciousness and the possibility of a loving transition. His vivid description of ancestral connection and universal love provides immense comfort and inspiration. If Arazdordi's story has touched your heart, please support our channel by liking this video and subscribing for more narratives that explore the deepest mysteries of life and beyond. And for our final question, how does Arazdordi's experience of being greeted by his ancestors at the moment of near death impact your own beliefs or feelings about family and connection beyond this life? May God bless you and fill your days with peace, understanding, and the radiant light of His eternal love. Until next time, keep exploring the wonders of creation.